Brian Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you, the Morning Majority. 101.9 FM, AM 630. WMAL.
6:37 on WMAL. We got Tucker Carlson and Larry Kudlow coming up at the 8 o'clock hour. Major Garrett from National Journal is live in studio. Great to have you.
Good morning, everyone.
So we were just having a interesting discussion about Newt Gingrich and
driving over, yes,
and Mitt Romney.
Feisty.
What did Newt Gingrich do for Freddie Mac? Do you have any idea?
Literally, what did he do? I have no idea. Well, we know because there were no disclosure forms, he didn't file as a lobbyist. There are rules in Washington. If you become a registered lobbyist, you have to explain for whom you work and what you do and what you charge, generally.
But what is a lobbyist? What qualifies you to be a lobbyist?
Well, what a lobbyist does, and when you register as a lobbyist, you register and get and obtain access as a lobbyist on behalf of an association or a group of companies or just one company to lobby members of Congress directly on legislation, to ask them to consider your information about a piece of legislation, and also to be an active participant in the process of developing legislation and writing checks as campaign contributions.
Wait. For the record, I was not trying to imply that he was a lobbyist and hadn't registered, but I will say that it's silly to assume that the Gingrich Group's work was not based on the currency of Newt Gingrich as former Speaker and the connections that he had with Congress.
And that's a valid point. There is something that comes with the two things that come with a former Speaker. One is the proximity and former access to power. Every former Speaker has that. But let us also stipulate that there is a fundamental difference between Tom Foley as a former Speaker and Newt Gingrich as a former Speaker.
In what way?
Well, Newt Gingrich was not only a powerhouse within Republican politics, but he was a known, multi-dimensional intellectual and political force in Washington. What Tom Foley did, and I can't remember if Tom Foley, the former Speaker who was defeated in 1994, actually became a registered lobbyist. I don't think so, but he had a minuscule presence in Washington. He just sort of shrank entirely from the public scene. Gingrich did not, neither on the idea side or on the consultancy side. And for Gingrich, consultancy was an almost a self-perpetuating money machine because of his prominence, because of his visibility, because of his name. And look,
but I'm trying to get to this one point, and I think it's important. If you say you're not a lobbyist, that means that you didn't actually go and lobby members of Congress about legislation.
It means you didn't register. Yes.
But is there any indication that he actually did that?
No.
All right. No. I mean, so what would he have gotten for that $200,000? What would he have done for that $200,000? The way I look at it, he offered strategic advice. But I mean, the other thing is, how much influence did he have with the former members of the House of Representatives? I mean, if you read some of the stories out there, a lot of them don't like him.
Some of the stories I've actually written, I wrote them then, and I've written them now. All that is true. And look, in the consultancy world, both in Washington and other high-powered cities like New York, Los Angeles, you are worth precisely what the client will pay you. Mm-hmm. And what is a broader point, and I think everyone needs to step back from this and think about what Fannie and Freddie did strategically with every former member, Republican and Democrat, who left public service and was looking for a place to land. Some people came over to Fannie and Freddie as full-time employees and reaped enormous financial gains. Some came on as consultants, but Fannie and Freddie sought after avidly powerful Republicans and Democrats for a couple of reasons. They wanted to keep their gold standard bipartisan support fundamentally throughout Congress, and one of the most important and easy ways for Fannie and Freddie to do that was to ladle the cash around in every conceivable direction, and they did that. And let's also remember this. At the time Gingrich was there was a bipartisan, and I'm always mindful to remind people, just because it's bipartisan doesn't mean it's absolutely wonderful. There was a bipartisan consensus in the late 90s for sure, and it accelerated in the early 2000s, that home affordability and home buying and home purchasing was a great engine not only of economic growth, but an extension of the American dream. And everyone bought into it, literally and figuratively. And then we got a bubble. And then when the bubble burst, everyone said, well, how did this happen? Well, it happened because a lot of people said, this is what ought to happen, Republicans and Democrats. And some of that was fueled by money from Fannie and Freddie, a government-sponsored entity or enterprise, GSE, that had the understood backing of the federal government for all of its mortgage activities. And you had a very cozy relationship, bipartisan, that did not entirely lead to the bubble, but it certainly helped fuel it.
And just worth asking questions about.
Yes, absolutely.
And for Gingrich to give a good answer.
I'm astonished at that answer, by the way.
Right.
Because if you spend any time, and believe me, the last couple of weeks I've really been going back and reading things that Gingrich says about free markets, about Frederick Hayek, about Milton Friedman, about all the things that drive a free society and drive a free economy. Nothing he said about Bain is consistent with the philosophy he purportedly espouses about free markets, free society, and the creative destruction and a functioning marketplace.
I think he just got mad.
Yeah.
You've also been looking at some of the things that Mitt Romney is.
It's hard to...
Mitt Romney has said and done in the past, and some of the positions he took during past campaigns.
Yeah, I wrote a column that's on the National Journal website right now. It's on our Decoded 2012 blog, which is our constant conversation about the 2012 presidential election. Okay, advertisement now concluded. And I said... people thought it was an attack line for Gingrich on Saturday at Drake University to say to Mitt Romney, well, the only reason you're not a career politician is because you lost to Ted Kennedy in 1994. And I was like, ooh, whoa, wow.
Burn.
Bringing out the...
Well, that's kind of a fun
bringing out the 2x4. And
Yeah.
I thought, well, let's think about it differently. Here's a couple of things that Gingrich also could have said about Mitt Romney in 1994. Mitt, while you were running in that race, you said it was a terrible idea to have a contract with America, and that no party should say, here's what we're going to do, and we promise to do it. That's just a bad idea. And he also said, there shouldn't be winners and losers. I'm not interested in parties winning. They all should come together. Well, I mean, Gingrich could have said, that was a moment of choosing in our party's history. You were either for something that was transformative, or you were against it. And guess what, Mitt? You were against it. Also, he could have said, you know what you said in that 94 campaign? You said that you did not want to be or return any policies to Reagan-Bush. As a matter of fact, you proclaimed you were an independent during the era of Reagan-Bush. I mean, there were a lot of worse things that Newt could have said and reminded Mitt Romney about that 94
and probably
campaign.
will.
And the 94 campaign, as I tweeted Saturday night, the problem for Mitt isn't that he lost that campaign. The problem for Mitt is that he ran to the left of Ted Kennedy and lost.
All right, Major Garrett from National Journal is in the house. We'll continue the conversation moving forward. And also, there's video goodness of those clips from
Yes,
Romney.
indeed. I've learned how to embed video in my own blog posts.
Wow.
Glory be.
I'm sure Romney's excited about it. It's
WMAL.
650 on WMAL, Major Garrett, National Journal, in studio. Okay, so
Wonderful.
Republicans leadership wants to pass this payroll cut extension.
They will today
So
in the House.
Will it? It won't pass the Senate, right?
No, not in current form, but let's return to our civics.
Yes.
The Senate tried and failed for various reasons. Democrats held together largely around the president's proposition. The Republicans in the Senate were divided. So it fell to the House Republicans to put together a bill that they believed would accomplish a couple of goals. First of all, pay for, with offsetting federal spending cuts, the cost, about $110 billion, of the payroll tax extension. And also pay for the extension of the unemployment insurance, which will not be 99 weeks, it'll be 59 weeks. A shorter duration, because House Republicans, whether it's true or not, and there's some economic evidence to suggest it, but they believe it as an absolute economic fact. They've now come to the conclusion that 99 weeks is keeping people on the jobless rolls artificially. Right. That people are just staying there and parking there as opposed to being out circulating in the job force. Whether that's true or not, they believe it. It's what I call a cloakroom fact. It may not be an actual fact, but it's believed widely in the cloakroom, which means it's an operative political reality.
Perception is more important than reality sometimes.
Indeed.
That's right.
And so they've got offsetting spending cuts, and they have the Keystone Pipeline in this bill, which is driven right through the middle of the Democratic ranks. Republicans have been divided on the payroll tax for 3 weeks, and they finally said, why don't we get something to divide those people over there? And that's what the Keystone Pipeline is. The president has not said he'll veto the bill over it. He said he will reject it.
Right.
Okay,
What
well,
does
we're
that
going to
mean?
find out in the next 7 days what is the practical difference
Does he
between
reject
reject
the
and veto.
idea, or
Yes.
does he actually veto it?
The auto pen signs it?
Because the House has voted on this previously. The House had a vote, standalone vote, to expedite consideration of the Keystone Pipeline. Tar sands in Canada come all the way through the United States down to the Gulf of Mexico. About 50,000 to 80,000, upwards of 200,000 jobs, depending on the statistics you look at. And the AFL-CIO is hugely for this, as are a lot of other building trade unions. And the last time the House considered this, 47 Democrats voted for it. Well, that would, if we have the vote today and 47 Democrats vote for it, then the Republicans can say this is broadly bipartisan, not just narrowly bipartisan. Send it over to the Senate with some real leverage. We'll find out.
Don't you find it interesting that the Obama administration in the Keystone decision decided to side with the environmentalists rather than the labor unions? That's pretty surprising to me.
Yes, they were trying to gain some credibility there that they had been losing. And we'll find out also if the president was really playing chess on this, winning some favor with the environmentalists for a while, knowing he would ultimately have to concede the point. We'll soon learn.
Major, great to have you in as always. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.